Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Jaiveer5 in a 10-minute game on chess.com. It's another climbing the rating ladder game. Let's play e4 against Jaiveer. Okay, and we get a double king pawn. Now black plays knight c6. Okay, Philidor. I'll play d4. I definitely like breaking in the center early. Bishop c4 is also a completely fine move. With d6, black does block in the bishop, but this is a reliable defense for black. Yeah, and here, white has a choice of taking on d4 with either the queen or the knight. I'm going to take with the knight and centralize. I like to think of this position similar to an open Sicilian, but with black only having one center pawn rather than two center pawns. So, h6. Okay, so this is a commonly played move. I guess in this form you don't see it as often just because white is not threatening to bring a knight into g5. However, I still think this is a mistake for black. Black's burning a tempo for no real compelling reason this early. Bishop g5 wasn't a threat yet. Now black is ruling out bishop g5. They can put their knight on f6, but it's hard to justify a move like that this early in the game, especially playing black. So, okay, knight f6. I'm just going to put the bishop on c4, take aim against f7. It can be hard to strictly punish this move, but black will be lagging a bit in development. So, yeah, I like what black is doing here. He's not wasting really any further time. Probably will get castled next. And for my part, I can try to develop perhaps bishop e3 or bishop f4, maybe even think about castling queenside. That would actually be an interesting approach here. But I could also just castle short, and after black castles short, just occupy the center. But yeah, I'm kind of looking at bishop f4, queen d2. I think that's an interesting direction to go, given what black has played. So by virtue of black having played h6, it's possible that in the middle game I may have some opportunities with this pawn being here. So maybe a sacrifice on h6 if black castles kingside. Maybe I can make a pawn storm happen and play g5 with greater effect, 2 points of contact. It's a little ways off at the moment, but something I'm thinking about. Okay, a6. So with this move, black indicates that they might be looking to play b5. I like this more than h6. And black does perhaps have the idea of playing b5, b4, and driving away my knight from the defense of this pawn, but even that would be a tall order for black to pull off because knight takes e4, they're so underdeveloped, I may even have a bishop d5 type move. So I'm thinking about playing queen e2 here, and on b5, I guess I'd have to play bishop d5 because there is a little bit of a trap. So if b5, bishop b3, I run into c5, and then black can continue with c4 and trap the bishop. So queen e2, b5, bishop d5 hits the rook. If knight takes d5, maybe I can play knight takes or even pawn takes to open the file. Not sure about that though. I could just play a4 and put a stop to whatever black is thinking about with b5. Just pausing for a second to consider my options. Queen e2, bishop d3 also might run into some c5 unpleasantness. I could play a3 if I want to be able to retreat the bishop, say, all the way to a2. Just a different way of playing the position. I think I'm going to do that, actually. Yeah, so b5, bishop a2, c5 is still possible for black, but my bishop is not going to be in danger. And if black ever embarks on that plan, I feel like the d6 pawn is kind of weak. So I'll be very curious to see if black does go ahead and play b5, and he does. Yeah, I think a2 is a little bit better of a square than b3 in this case, so let's drop it back. Okay, and now black castles. All right, so we're going to have this opposite side castling situation, or we're likely to. I could still castle short if I wanted, but that was kind of the angle I was looking at, was castling long. But given that I've played a3, I wonder if it makes more sense to change up my plan here and castle short. Yeah, because c5, b4 could be a bit annoying in the middle game, because black will have 2 points of contact, much like I was talking about over here. Maybe I should, in fact, just castle short here. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I still like my bishop on this long diagonal, and if black wants to shut it out, then they got to weaken their d6 square, or their d6 pawn, rather, in the d5 square. So this is 10-minute, no increment. As usual, I've spoke a lot in the opening. I should probably move a little bit faster. Hope you guys are all having a good weekend. Okay, knight h7. That is a strange looking move for sure. So maybe looking to open up the dark square bishop. One thing I look at immediately is this. Also, bishop d5 is opened up. Black would have to play rook a7 there. That looks pretty uncomfortable, although not yet losing or anything for black. And knight d5 would be my default move in this position. Maybe just go after that dark square bishop. Could also play something like rook e1 and just wait to see if black makes an error, how they're gonna develop. But definitely knight d5 catches my eye. Queen h5, another interesting move, although black might just go back to h6. I could play bishop d5, rook a7, bishop e3, although I think then it's pretty likely black will play c5. I think I'm just going to play a helpful move here, rook e1. I want to see how black arranges their pieces, because any sort of queenside development here looks like it may come with a penalty. Yeah, so knight here, but now I get knight c6 as an option. Knight c6, queen e8, forced, and then maybe knight d5. Further infiltrate. Also I have bishop d5 now. Okay, so bishop d5, and the rook is driven to either a7 or b8, and then knight c6. I think that's the proper move order. Yes, okay, let's do that. See how I combine motifs there? I was thinking about bishop d5 or knight d5 in the previous position a move ago, but black seemed to have things covered just by one square or one move. But when black plays this, I asked myself, what did black just give away? And it was control the c6 square. So now this knight jumping in is going to be a massive problem for black. Okay, and it looks like black's just going to give me the exchange here. Could go take it right away. I could also throw in this move. Knight c6 and go take the bishop and then go take. That's also pretty good. Could do that even after playing bishop takes a8. I think I'm just going to bank this first. Okay, and then, yeah, I definitely like the look of knight c6. Come in with the fork. So up the exchange here. I might even play knight d5 next, depending upon where black goes. Could play it on either move, but yeah, let's say queen d7 as black just played, knight d5, and queen takes c6 runs into knight takes e7 with the fork on the king and the queen. So I like playing knight d5. It's a nice active move. Thing is, black may move their dark square bishop. I could also just play takes and then e5. Like, that looks pretty good as well. Open the center of the board for my pieces. So yeah, I think it's between knight d5 and taking and then e5. Queen d5 runs into knight here, so I don't see anything great with that. I'm going to go with knight d5. I'm also thinking, well, black could play bishop h4 here, perhaps. But then I might play queen h5 and go after his bishop. Bishop h4, and black would be threatening queen takes c6. But if I go attack their bishop, okay, he plays bishop g5. I think I'm just going to trade against this. And I was considering maybe playing knight e7 and going after their light square bishop once we make this trade, but I could also play, again, a useful move like queen h5. It's another option. So let's take, and I'm predicting he'll take with the knight. Yeah, knight e7, go take the bishop, definitely possible, along with queen h5. Maybe I should go take his bishop with probably my c knight, just because he might play bishop b7 next move if he gets the chance. And my knights could be a little awkward, so yeah, I'm going to opt for that. Check and go after that knight. Or after that bishop, rather. Okay, let's take. Takes with the queen. Okay, I could play f4. I could activate my queen. f4 looks pretty good. Slightly opens my king, but I think it's a completely fine idea. Yeah, gains a little space. Let's do it. And now if I were black in this position and going forward, I would try to avoid further trades. There's been quite a few swaps after black has lost the exchange. So it's in their best interest to try to keep pieces on the board. I think queen d2 is a decent move here. Could also go for f5, f6 perhaps, and maybe play to weaken their king side. Although I think I like queen d2 first. That's just an easy move to make. Connects my rooks. Maybe keep this in reserve. I like my queen peering at that h6 pawn, which black moved way back in the opening. Okay, queen there. So now I have to be aware that there's a check there, but I don't think it really does much. I just sidestep. So yeah, strongly considering playing this. I like the look of that. I'm going to do it. Tough position for black, being down the exchange with the knight all the way in the corner on a8. Knights do not like to be in corners. They only have 2 squares to go to from there. In this case, black doesn't even have the c7 square, so it's the worst possible location for a knight on the board. As opposed to a center square where you have all of these options. Let's say if you had a knight on d4. Okay, knight c5. Yeah, and I'm thinking just plow forward with f6. Looks like a good moment to take the battle over here with black having many pieces on the queen side. Ooh, and now this is going to be checkmate in 2. Knight takes f6 or even knight e7 after this. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to that critical position when black played knight d7, because that, I think for all intents and purposes, is the losing move. It loses an exchange. Black has a pretty bad position after that too. So sometimes you can parlay a loss of material into some sort of slight initiative, or your opponent burning that time to go take the material may cost them in a certain sense, but not here. This is a pretty clean exchange, and black even has a bad knight in the corner, as I was saying. So I'm just wondering if I could have played this better somehow. Rook e1. It didn't feel like the most incisive move, but it just seems like black has some problems developing in a decent manner here. I was thinking if the bishop goes to b7 to cover this diagonal, I might play knight f5 when black can't take me with their bishop. So that was one option. I think this is okay how I handled it. I did change plans a little bit. I was talking about castling queenside perhaps, but probably after black plays a6 and I make the decision to play a3 or even a4 if I wanted to stop black from playing b5. Yeah, I probably shouldn't castle queenside anymore, so I think I did make a good adjustment with that. I was talking in a recent standard video about changing your plan up, especially your global plan in the position. Totally fine to do that. Yeah, so definitely don't like some of these moves that black played on the flanks. So starting with h6, a6 was probably a useful move, a semi-useful move. Still not a developing move, but at least when black plays that, they do introduce this threat of b5 and they cover the b5 square. But knight h7 also, I really dislike that move for black. There's just no reason to undevelop your knight here or move your knight to the edge of the board like this when you have multiple pieces that are not in the game yet. I mean, I don't think black gains a ton of value in being able to bring the bishop out like this yet. So black should really focus on trying to complete their development somehow. Again, bishop e7, I mentioned, maybe gives up the f5 square, but at least in this case, my rook isn't on e1 yet, so black would be hitting the e4 pawn. So, I would think about moves like that. Maybe c5 still. And this would be interesting. Let's say c5 and I go here. Maybe now playing bishop b7 or perhaps even c4 if black wants to try to block my bishop out. Although I do think my bishop can get back in the game. And had this happened, this is a situation you sometimes see out of the Philidor Defense. I can try to switch gears here and go after the d6 pawn, so play queen d2. It's nice having my bishop on f4. That was one of the reasons I put it there. And go rook d1 and try to hammer that d6 pawn. So, yeah, just too many flanky type moves. Black's still doing all right even after having played those flank pawn moves because it's hard for white to open the center too much. I don't want to go just outright for e5 in the opening. I wasn't quite prepared for that. Maybe after bishop f4 I can entertain it, but especially after black castles short. Like black's not in any immediate danger, but if you make a couple of moves like knight h7, and then especially compound it with a move like knight d7, giving up key squares, understandable that black quickly landed in trouble here. And I think an instructive moment right here, combining these motifs, returning to an idea that I had just considered about which piece to bring in here, and yeah, combining it with the newly possible idea of knight c6 with that fork. So let's click over to the analysis board real quick and just see what the computer has to say. So instead of playing h6, if you're going to play this line for black, knight f6, knight c3, bishop e7, much like black did in the game, just play it without h6. Don't think you gain a lot by inserting that move. Black can also try to hold the pawn on e5, by the way. So in this position, there's that famous game, the Paul Morphy Opera House game, which I feel I've referenced a million times on my channel, but the Duke and the Count in that game played bishop g4, and then Morphy took, and this led to a great position for white with quick development. But you can play, for instance, knight d7 if you want to try to hold the e5 pawn. This is the Hanham-Philidor variation. Black usually goes knight f6 and then bishop e7, castle short after that. I had another recent climbing the rating ladder game that went like that. So, yeah, h6, it's not the type of move that white's going to be able to refute, but it should give white a very comfortable position. Yeah, bishop c4. Occasionally you have to look at the center fork trick idea, knight takes e4, although in this case it seems exceedingly risky for black to do this. The idea is if takes to play d5 and try to fork and gain one of these pieces back, but with black having no development here, I think that would be a very risky thing to do. Just no pieces off the back rank for black. Black, I guess I could play on knight takes e4, I could even play queen e2 and pin this knight. Yeah, and if queen e7, knight d5 is a nice shot hitting the queen, attacking c7, also maintaining the attack on e4. This is busted for black. So black definitely doesn't want to do that. Bishop f4, a6. Let's see what the engine thinks about my a3 move. a4 also completely fine. I think if I played a4, I would definitely be looking to castle short rather than queenside. So, had black done something like this, I was considering playing queen d2, and let's just make a normal developing move for black, knight there, or maybe knight c6. Possibly going for this plan. This looks interesting to me. Maybe with the idea of f3, g4, h4, and then eventually g5. There's just such a big difference in attacking that way when the pawn is on h6 versus if the pawn is back on h7. Let me just illustrate that with some possible moves here. These are definitely not ideal moves, let's say, but just to show you what I'm going for, like something like this. g5, 2 points of contact, so that even if black moves this knight, I can take h6 and try to open the position. Looking for this, get the h-file going, maybe swing the queen over. This would be a dream attacking position for white. So that's a plan with the pawn on h6 I consider a lot more than if black had just kept that pawn back on h7. But I think a3 is all right. Again, you got to be careful about this. They call it the Noah's Ark trap. So if white plays, let's say I play queen e2 here, and black goes b5, and I just retreat my bishop, you really got to watch this. This is a famous trap in the Ruy Lopez as well. So c5, gaining a tempo on the knight. If the knight gets driven away, c4, and bye-bye bishop. So that's why I like a3 or a4. Again, kind of dealing with this b5 idea. So now black can't play b4 here. Black could play c5, but I thought this would be very risky for black to do. Knight f3 or knight f5. And let's say black does this, just as an example, and then grabs here. Well, they run into either bishop d5 or queen d5. Probably both are good in this case, but often it's a bishop that comes to this square, hitting the knight, hitting the undefended rook as well. So here again, black is suffering from their backward development. So black castled, I castled, yeah, knight h7. Just opens up a plethora of candidate moves for me. Very tempting to play knight d5 or bishop d5 right away, but as I mentioned before, sometimes you can hold back on a compelling, obvious threat and try to increase the pressure and maybe land that threat in the future with greater effect. So that was my thinking with rook e1, which the computer says is pretty decent. It also likes queen f3, maybe taking an eye on that rook there. Possibly I can play e5 to come. But yeah, I think rook e1's pretty good. Because if I had played this, bishop d5, rook a7, I wasn't completely satisfied with this. Looks super awkward for black, but If I jump in now with the fork, black just gets to trade. I don't want to give black easy decisions here. You know, if I play bishop e3 as well, trying to line up with the rook, black can play c5. Also, not a whole lot there. So white is about +1.5 in this position. The computer says playing bishop f6 or maybe rook a7, sort of a prophylactic move makes sense. Yeah, just tough for black to develop. I mean, bishop d7 looks kind of passive and ugly. It's another thing I would consider, though, for black under the circumstances. Okay, and here, the engine thinks I can maybe play e5. Yeah, that's one good reason to put the rook on e1 if I want to play e5. Comes with some nice defense behind it. Yeah, and bishop b7 was another move to try to cover this. I mentioned knight f5 was looking good for me with attacking chances. But instead, black went here, knight d5, and yep, I'm winning material, because if the rook comes to b8 or a7, you get the fork again. So black opted to give the exchange right away, which seems reasonable. Yeah, could play knight c6 here. I don't think it matters a whole lot. I think they do just transpose. Maybe I should have taken the bishop right away. I possibly made things overly complicated by playing knight d5, but it's such an attractive move. And it's fine. It's not going to change the evaluation so much, but maybe in hindsight like this, and then e5 or knight d5 and then e5 was just the way to go. Yeah, my bishop and my rook behind. This looks pretty good. I mean, I think I saw this line, but this looks pretty nice. Maybe even knight d5 here. Just play right down the center of the board when I've got the extra exchange and black has these pretty lame knights on the edge of the board. But knight d5, and again, the tactical justification is that if black takes, I take the bishop and fork the king and the queen. I thought maybe bishop h4 was a decent try for black here, because now black would be threatening to take with the bishop guarding e7. And yeah, I might have to retreat my knight, or I was thinking about this move as well. Seems fine. If black takes here, trying to get a pawn for it and then take, they still run into knight e7. So just considering that. So as played, bishop g5, I just took. Yeah, knight e7 looks fine. Computer wants to play f4 or h4 here. I just took the bishop on c8. In general, it's not great to take undeveloped pieces. So yeah, pieces your opponent has not brought into the game yet if you have an active piece, but given that I'm ahead in material and my knights kind of need the protection of one another, you know, especially that knight on e7, very deep in black's position, I think it's a fine decision. Yeah, f4, I'm at about +3.5 or +4 here. So in addition to being up the exchange, if you consider that +2, the computer thinks I just have a great position, probably because of my attack, my initiative going. That explains the extra material, or the boost in the evaluation from +2, if you will. And again, black's knight over here. I think black should try to include that knight pretty soon, but they didn't really get a good chance. Yeah, queen b7. I guess if I were black here, I would try to somehow address this threat of f5, f6. Like maybe pawn f6. Although that looks ugly, it creates some weaknesses like g6. But maybe something like this. Yeah, knight g5. And at least that stops my pawn up from coming up there, which creates certain weaknesses on the black king side. I'd like to say black should try to get this knight involved, but yeah, knight b6 also isn't going to help much. If knight b6, I mean, I could go with f5 still, but I could also just take double black's pawns and win d6. Although I would allow queen takes c2. So, yeah, probably f6, something like that. Or maybe c6. I see the computer's recommending drive away the knight. Try to keep pieces on the board as much as possible. And black should be looking at my play over here, f5, f6. And, yeah, it looks like my opponent just didn't do that. Yeah, I feel like after this, it's essentially losing for black. Black could leave the structure as is, but I can take, open their king. You know, let's just say black plays knight b6 now. I can take, and then probably lift a rook. Rook e3, for instance, coming over to g3 looks very strong. Damaged king. But as played, knight c5, f6. Yeah, and black took. Black could also try to play g5. Note that g6 just runs into queen takes h6 and queen g7 mate, or knight e7 mate. So they could try G5, but again, when you start to have 2 pawns moved in front of your king, your opponent has like a pawn wedged this deep in the position. It's too tough. Again, a rook lift looks good. Maybe even H4 if I want to try to open further lines, but probably a rook lift. Yeah, and then this was over. Okay, so thanks to Jaiveer5 for the game, 1454 rated. Again, advice to my opponent, I think I would cut out that H6 move. A6, possibly useful, but Black really needs to be thinking about their development. You know, I'd say right here, this is where Black absolutely needs to start developing, or, you know, maybe throw in C5 to push my knight back. It does create a weakness on D6. But playing moves like knight H7 isn't going to cut it here when you're behind in development and you're giving up control of critical squares like D5, which just allowed knight or bishop to D5. Also, got to consider your opponent's threats. You know, I think he moved a bit fast. Like, he was moving pretty quickly throughout this game. But, yeah, I think Black's got to slow down and recognize that they're behind in development, they're cramped, and try to work out of the position accordingly, taking into account White's possible ideas. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you're having a great weekend, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye, guys.